Joining us now to talk about that, Senator Bob Corker. He's chair of the Foreign Relations Committee, member of the Budget and Banking Committees. And Senator, it's great to have you on today. Thanks for joining us.
Joe, good to be with you. Thank you. Yes, sir.
You know, when they talked to the president yesterday, everyone loves to talk about this other stuff. They're like, well, what about, what about this? Is that going to change their votes on I want to ask you, would something like what we've all witnessed in the past week or two, would that ever affect what you do when it comes to tax reform or your vote? I can't imagine it would.
No, absolutely not. Look, this tax reform is our agenda. It's the Republican Senate agenda. And, Joe, it'd be like somebody in your listening audience representing their company, sitting across the table from someone they may have a low regard for, but are they going to do something that's going to damage their company because of that? Absolutely not. I mean, this is something that can be great for our nation. I'm all in. I think it was the Corker compromise in the Budget Committee that's allowing this to go forward. And now we begin the tough work. This will be the biggest tax rewrite since 1986. It is a tremendous undertaking. And Joe, I think what's happened is because of what Toomey and I agreed to and the Budget Committee passed out and then passed out on the floor, I think people have been focused on the $1.5 trillion. People don't realize, and they shouldn't because they're busy building companies and doing other things, that much of that was a parliamentary maneuver to just free us for tax reform. So let me walk through the numbers because I think this is what people are going to be focused on over the next 3 or 4 weeks. There's $1.5 trillion that we passed out of the Budget Committee. $0.5 trillion of that was just to align us to current policy. So that's just something to make us, to allow us to do tax policy working off the policy base we have today. There was a $1 trillion number in there to allow for some dynamic scoring, assuming it actually happens. The meat of this, let me put it a different way, the spinach of this is the $4 trillion. The $4 trillion in loophole closings, credit closings, simplifying the code that needs to take place. So people should look at it this way. There's $5 trillion that we have here. $1 trillion of it could be made up with dynamic scoring. It's got to prove out. But 80% of it, $4 trillion of it, is actually closing loopholes. And when I was on your program last, I don't think people understood that that's what's really happening here is tax reform. And so, look, this is where the real, and look, I'm all for every penny of the $4 trillion. But we've got to hang tough to get there, and the fact is, it worries me when I see people dealing away things that we're going to need. I mean, we're going to get into the quick of special interest groups. We're going to be dealing with things that people are going to just go nuts over, but it's what it's going to take to have the biggest tax rewrite since 1986. I'm all in. I want the dynamic scoring to prove out, but it only proves out if you do this significant tax reform that we have underway.
And I don't think everyone understands. People that when you talk to $4 trillion, they're like, well, let's assume even more dynamic scoring. But under budgetary constraints, you're stuck with this. You're stuck with $1.5 trillion. It's not something that you decided on. It's the way it is. So the $4 trillion's got to come out.
It's got to come out
one way or another. And do these guys? And what's interesting is I don't even think you're not worried about Schumer and the Democrats. You're worried about business lobbying. You're worrying about. I mean, they're going to come after you guys on every one of these sacred cows. And the guys that are going to vote for this are going to have intestinal fortitude that they've never been able to demonstrate in the past, I don't think, at least not this current group. Have they?
Joe, this, again, I look in people's eyes and
you see fear.
I see fear. And this is what I've been trying to say the whole time. And last time I was on, again, I don't think it was dawning on people what is really happening here. But to get rates, corporate rates to 20%, deal with the territorial issues, deal with the individual rate issues, deal with the 25% pass-through issue, you have got to get the full $4 trillion. And this is going to be interesting. I'm ready. I love it. I love it. And yet I hope we're going to be successful. But when I see, maybe the president the other day, and again, I don't want to start a dispute, or I see House members talking about fiddling with something, You cannot be dealing away things. Two things happen. Number one, you erode that $4 trillion. But secondly, if groups see, Joe, that you're willing to deal something away if they raise enough cane, the whole thing's going to start falling apart. Do you understand? I mean, we got to hang tough.
Hence, you're worried about the president, since it's being done in Congress, that those comments from you the other day, and then you see the 401k comments. You want to, before you give anything away, you want want this to be written to know what you need to fight for. Is that? Have I got that?
You got to have the whole cafeteria of the tax code.
Even
out
401ks.
there.
You need everything on the table.
You got to have everything out there. You may decide it's not something you want to do, but you've got to add up to $4 trillion. What I know is, I had a great meeting the other day with our tax writers, who I have a tremendous respect for, and I'm up under the hood because of the role I've played in this and will continue to play. But we're adding up all these tough measures, and we're at about $3.6 trillion. Getting that additional 400 is, I don't want to say it on this program because I don't want to hurt our chances for what we need to do, but it is going to be incredibly painful. But that's what we need to do to simplify the code, which is what we've told people, to get the dynamic growth we're talking about, but importantly, get these business rates down to where we can be competitive with the industrialized world.
Real quickly, Senator Corker, two issues. First of all, you're at $3.6 trillion, and does that include the 401k options? Does that include the SALT?
I don't want to get, I'm not going to get into what it does and doesn't include. I'm sorry, Becky, I'd love to, but I want our tax writers to have all that they need to do working together. There's some base erosion issues they've got to work through with the business community. There are all kinds of individual rate issues they've got to work through. I want them to have the headroom. That's why, by the way, I agreed to do what I did on the Budget Committee. I am a deficit hawk. I do not want this to add to the deficit, but I believe if we do it right, it won't.
Okay, well, let me ask you to clarify another issue. I won't go through piece by piece because I understand your overall strategy here. What I heard at the top of this interview was you say, I'm all in regards to tax reform.
Yeah.
There has been so much speculation that you are going to be a holdout, not just because of the bickering back and forth that's been taking place, but more importantly because of what you just said about being a deficit hawk, that you've said you won't vote for anything that adds a dime to the deficit. And
that's
I guess
correct.
That's where we come down to it. You're all in, but only if you're not doing this on dynamic scoring, if this is something that really doesn't add to the deficit. And so that, I guess, what I'm trying to parse is I'm all in. What does that mean?
Look, I'm all in closing $4 trillion of loopholes. I'm all in for locking arms and having the intestinal fortitude to do it. And Becky, if we do it right, and we do the corporate things we're talking about, I believe we'll get the dynamic score that is necessary to close that $1 trillion that I was talking about on the front end. I believe we'll get it. It's got to be proven. We've got to have appropriate scoring, but I was willing in the Budget Committee as a deficit hawk to give that $1 trillion headroom. It's got to prove out. It won't prove out if we don't do the things I was just talking about. It just will not. And so again, the two really interlock with each other and work with each other. I believe if we will lock arms, be tough, close these loopholes, do the things we need to do on the business side, I believe we can get the growth, but it's got to prove itself out, and scorers, people who are, legitimate scorers will do that. But I think we've got a chance if we cut the $4 trillion.
Yeah, Senator, the individual sides and even the pass-through. I think in the past you've mentioned that what we really want, the holy grail here is corporate tax reform. Would it be
That's what I believe, yeah.
Would it be easier if some of that other stuff wasn't included, because then you got to pay for that too? Or is it politically impossible to do it without being able to sell it as a tax cut for individuals? Is that why is it like PR?
It is. Look, I can't believe I'm going to say this on your program and get the kind of incoming I'm getting ready to get by saying this, okay? But some of the things we're doing, I'm sorry, are ridiculous. I'm sorry, it's just, but we live in a political world, and not going to drive 1 ounce of economic growth, but it's, you know, it's unfortunately what you have to do to pass a tax bill. We could take a lot of this off and throw it in the trash can,
right? But
make it easier and actually do something that grows our economy and increases wages.
You could go to 15. You could go to 15 without some of this other stuff, and by paying for the on corporate and by paying for this other stuff, you may end up having to settle for 25, and then, you know, it's almost like...
Well, then it falls apart, Joe. I think that once you begin that, here's what I agree with. We've been saying in our caucus. We can do something really big, hang tough, eat the spinach, fight off the special interest, and do something great for our country. And there'll be just as much pain there as there will be doing something small and focusing only on a few special interests. Both are going to be painful. Why don't we do something great for our nation? But when you start talking about adjusting the corporate rate up, I'm telling you, I think things start falling apart. I think you've analyzed it right. We're doing a lot of things that aren't pro-growth. It's unfortunate. It's a buying off of people to pass tax reform. I hate to say it that way, but that's unfortunately where we are.
I can't believe you're saying that either. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, we got 10 seconds. Is there any chance for a détente with you and the president? Can you answer that in 10 seconds? What should we be expecting?
Yeah, look, I don't. One of the things I don't think about when I wake up in the morning is what's happening over there. Look, I got a job to do, and I've been hired to do it. I've got 14 months left, and I'm going to go out with afterburners trying to make good things happen. So.
Okay. Senator, great having you on. Thanks for coming on today. And I think we kept it where we wanted it to be, just in terms of we need to know these things, and it's you know, it's going to be tough medicine, and there's going to be, you guys got to have some, you know, feet of clay aren't going to make it this time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.